Well, we've got some really interesting topics to cover on this session of your business boot camp. Today, let's talk a little bit about your buyers and sellers. Now, before your clients become buyers and sellers, they're just leads. So first, have you got for sure a way to onboard them so you never lose them again? Because if I didn't mention it before, you might meet someone today who likes you and maybe they would work with you, but they don't need your service for 2 more years or 5 more years. I just got a client this week from someone who heard me speak 6 years ago, and she didn't need any help until now. So when you've got a potential connection, make sure you have a system to add them to your email database. Make sure you're giving them value and touches so that when it becomes time and they need real estate services, yes, you're top of mind. And for heaven's sakes, make it easy for them to connect with you, respond to them right away. You are not the government. Okay. So you can treat them with real humanity, and you don't want to put them off. So, answering your phone right away is a great way to capture people. Sometimes you might think it's spam, but so what? It also might be a client. And if you can talk to them right away, then you've got somebody, you've got that first step in the door. Now, good sales psychology. Listen, it would be good for some of your time. Read some books on sales, take some sales psychology courses. But briefly, I do want you to consider the emotional needs of your clients. They're not just wanting to buy a house in a certain price point or with certain, particular characteristics. You need to find out what your prospect um, values and what kind of emotion they're looking to get, because when they're looking to buy a house, what's their family going to think about them? What are their friends going to think when they come over? If they have work colleagues, are they in a neighborhood that their work colleagues are going to think that that's good for them? If you can anticipate what their emotional response is going to be, then you can cater your services, and talk about these things and make sure that you go over them when you're talking to your prospective clients. In fact, in sales psychology, the least thing you need to talk about is price and value of a product, because that really isn't why people buy. Now, of course, in real estate, they're in a budget and they need to have value, but those aren't the reasons behind their choice. The reasons behind their choice are either moving towards pleasure or being careful about avoiding pain. In fact, one study showed that a desire for positive things has a motivational power of 1, but the desire to resist making a mistake has a motivational power of 2.5. So people are twice as, people think it's twice as important or react twice as much to making a mistake. And so that might be part of what you talk about when let's talk about buyers first. When you're talking to buyers, you might want to reassure them that you're going to make sure that they don't make a buying mistake. Maybe you've got a little pamphlet or something that you can talk about buying mistakes. But before you create, your shtick or your script to talk to buyers about, really consider the psychology and their emotions, and then bring the humanity into it. Listen, what would your brother like to have for advice from you, or your mom or your dad? How would they like to be served? And then when you take all of those facts into consideration, okay, what's the special sauce that you have? How can you take care of their needs in your own special way and exceed their expectations? So those answers will give you some definite food for thought that you can try out. Now, with most buyers, I think most brokerages would recommend that you have an actual meeting with them first, in person, ideally. If people are coming from out of town, certainly you can meet them virtually. But what are you doing at that meeting presentation? That should be well thought out by you. So if you're going to sit down with somebody who's looking to buy a property, what do they need in that appointment to be able to feel comfortable enough to make a decision, yes, to work with you? That should be well thought out. It shouldn't take 3 hours. And maybe you leave them with something. Maybe you have something for them that they can take home and remember why they want to work with you. Now, for buyers, sometimes the first time you're really getting together is when you're viewing a house. I know it's not ideal, but it does happen. Someone might just phone you up and say, I just see a house right now I want to see. Fine. But at least be conscious about what you want to make this first viewing experience be like. I'll always remember my husband had to take an Uber. Surprisingly, one morning his truck wouldn't start in the middle of winter. And so he called an Uber. And so he's stressed out, he's probably going to be a bit late for work. And when the Uber driver came, even though it was freezing cold, he rolled down that passenger window. And when my husband came out of the house, he said, hello, are you Jamie? I'm here to drive you. Jamie gets in the car. And in the middle of the back seat, there's a little box full of treats, Rice Krispie squares, granola bars, muffins, and some bottles of water. And the driver says, hey, I'm sure you didn't plan on catching an Uber this morning. And maybe you're, in a bit of a rush. Maybe you didn't have breakfast. Feel free to help yourself. And my husband, when he got home from work at the end of the day, just had such a great experience that he shared this with me. And you know what? That is how you connect with people. You think for them. You go ahead in your own mind. What do these people need? So when you're out to see the first house or first grouping of houses, what do your buyers need that would help them? Maybe you have snacks in your car. Maybe if they have kids, you have treats or coloring books. Or I always recommend bubble gum because then that gives them their mouths something to chew. But how about also a package for the prospective buyers? A nice folder, maybe that's customized with your name or your logo, something that looks official and makes them feel respected. All the printouts, of course, of the houses you're going to see. And then maybe you ask your people to rate the houses that they like. What score do you give them, out of a 10? And have them make their own notes. So when they're looking back, they remember each particular house because when you've seen a lot of houses, it's almost impossible to connect the memories with the actual houses. So just go ahead and consider all of these things. How can you make that experience good for them? And make sure that you explain your duties and what your duties are when people are working with you. You don't want prospective buyers to have any question, if they're out driving around one weekend and there's open house, and they pop into it. Well, what if they want to buy that house? You want them to understand the ethics and the agreement that someone makes when they're working with you, that you're representing them. And I know how many times real estate offices, I've worked with people who get phone calls from someone who wants to see their listing, but they do have their own agent, but they just called that listing realtor, kind of maybe sometimes thinking that they'll get a deal if they buy, from the listing agent. So it's your job to explain to them how you represent them, that you get paid out of the seller's fees for the most part. And it's your job to make sure that they understand how the industry works. Otherwise, you just might find yourself with some wishy-washy clients who might not use you if you're not clear about that. And you know what? If they don't want to commit and be represented by you, then that's fine. They can still be a customer, but it's imperative that you both understand the commitments, what you can offer. And if they are just wanting to be a customer, great. Then you don't have to waste your time representing their interests. Now, sellers, let's talk about them, because when a seller wants to work with you, for sure, 90% of the time, you're going to go over and meet with them. But can I just tell you, you probably have figured this out already, but please don't go into their home and start your sales presentation. I don't like people to feel pitch slapped, as I like to say, where it's all about you, all about your brokerage, and where you just, run off with your mouth. Because sometimes when we're nervous, We talk too much. So after what I just told you about buyers, consider that with your sellers as well, that you're coming into their house and your job is to be interested in them, to find out where their values are, what they're worried about, if they're worried about anything, maybe what their last real estate experience was like. And just, you should know what you're going to cover and what you're going to say, but don't make it like a script. In fact, there are really important things for sellers. Maybe you've got a one sheet, or maybe you've got a seller's booklet that you can go through and help them remember all the things that you've talked about so that they feel taken care of. If you are uncomfortable having your first client, which I don't blame you, in fact, you probably should be, this is a very important business, don't hesitate to ask friends and family, can I practice on you? And go do a CMA, comparable market analysis on their home. Look up their property and take over your brochure and walk through their house like you're really interested, and just get that idea. If they were selling, what kinds of things would they want to hear and need to hear from you? I know when I sold a house, one of my first homes in BC, I invited over a few realtors. And the first guy, now in hindsight, I look back and I know he was well established, experienced agent, probably would have done a great job selling my house. But when he came over, he did not seem interested in the memories that that home, held for me. He did not seem interested in the lifestyle or how much I loved that house. All he saw were the facts that he was going to put in the listing, and I didn't hire him to list that house. So it's never wrong to be interested in your client's house. Yes, as you get more experience, this will just be a lot of facts and statistics for you. But remember, it's an emotional place where this person has lived for however many years, maybe raised a family, etc. And if you're going to show yourself being the expert, when you're walking through the house and they're showing you things, you should be writing them down somewhere and taking those things seriously. Maybe you think about asking if they have any exclusions. Do they have any family heirlooms, mirrors, chandeliers, curtains up that they want to take with them because you're thinking for them? Compliment their renovations or any improvements and take notice of them. Um, do you know the difference between hardy boards and vinyl siding? Especially if you're in Alberta, hey, we get some radical hail damage out here. So your sellers, they want to know that you're interested and you're seeing their house, and that you can take care of them. And then once they feel taken care of, I just want to mention for a second, you need some signs. You want to stick a for sale sign in their yard. And in case I don't get a chance to talk about them later, I mean, I've seen all kinds of for sale signs. You've seen them as you drive by. But let me just ask you, before you pay the money to have them made, what are the most important things that people need to see on your signs? You need to think about that and decide for yourself. I see some people who I think, they want their sign to just look glamorous, or they want the sign to be about the graphics or about their brokerage, or they want to have a clever tagline. And if that's what's important to you, that's totally fine. But I just want to put a little bug in your ear. Your name should be one of the biggest things clearly defined on your sign, and how they can reach you. Your phone number, whether they can text you, certainly a website. You want your sign to be your calling card so people can go, oh, yes, I recognize that name. So think long and hard about it before you get your signs just made and you don't put any thought into it. So I hope that you're creating this system that you can give clients your most excellent service based on their highest needs, that you can write out your ideal client's journey. Did you do that from the last session? Have you put in somewhere on there, make a note where you're going to send out the moving checklist for your clients? Have you done that yet? And you can use some of those timed to-dos right into your CRM. You can put them in there and they'll email you a notification so that you never ever lose it. There's so much to do at the beginning. I mean, it's exciting, but one thing I'll just mention before we go to is family time, personal time. Often an entrepreneur probably won't book or take a long holiday for the first few years because they're just building their business. But that doesn't mean you can't take off a few nights a week for something special or a long weekend and reconnect with your family and spend personal time as well. So go ahead in your calendar and time block off special occasions or special moments that you do want to prioritize. Maybe you're not taking a European vacation in your first year of business, but you still need to make sure that you're building those relationships that are most important. Okay, so that is a lot of important things, lots of things to think about. Take your time and do your best, and your good habits that will give you the maximized results that you're looking for. And I'll see you at our next session.